Welcome back. I remember as a kid, who instigated, I don't know, but we used to say to each other, ask a dumb question and you'll get a dumb answer. It's kind of an interesting, it's kind of an interesting truth, a kind of a reality. And I don't mean you don't have to be asking other people dumb questions. The Making a likeness in painting requires you to ask questions of yourself to get to clarity about the adjustments you're about to make. So following on the heels of sort of 460, which I don't know what we are, 460 something now, five or something, we are going to talk about um, the process of asking questions to get a better likeness, to pursue the likeness. And before we do, I want to thank Ben C. You've been as faithful a friend as we've had, Ben. So much appreciated. And Christopher F., thank you for that lovely contribution to the cause. Keep it coming, guys. If you want to keep this going, and because it does have to pay for itself, I still think we're doing okay. I think we're breaking even. Mr. Producer's getting paid. All right, but let's talk about some simple questions. You know, the idea of asking simple questions and getting simple answers, manageable answers. Do you remember when at some point when you're working, you would be well, let's put it in my personal terms. In the first person, when I was working, I would recall there'd be an area where I have a problem. I didn't know what in the heck to do with it, so I would just paint it over again. I'd ask for a show of hands if I was sitting in the room. Does that sound familiar? You just go to the area and you paint it over again. You have no idea how to fix it. You just think, I got to paint this area over again. It's not good. It's not good. One of the things you're going to figure out after a while, before very long, and this is really addressed to people who might be pretty close to the beginning of figuring out painting, that you're going to need to ask better questions. In other words, you need to know exactly what the problem is. And we've mentioned this before. So you're looking at the big impression in front of you. Let's say you have a bunch of notes already down there. You're looking at the big impression in front of you. And I've said to you before, you need to get clarity about there's a problem over here. The back straggler is the fundamental issue. There's an area where the back straggler is. Then there is the process that you go through of saying, well, what is the problem? Is that a shape problem? Is it a color problem? Is it a values problem per se? Is it a location problem? Is it an edge, light effect, et cetera, et cetera? Do you see what I mean? An edge. Okay. Do you see what I'm saying? You get clarity like that. And that's the first question. That's the first thing you want to do is ask that simple question. But you have to actually go through a list. You have to click them off one at a time. Is that a shape problem? You see the simplification I'm talking about? Is that a shape problem? You know, you can tell. The thing is sticking at you in the eyes. I try to tell people, by the way, I have an attitude about color. If there's a color problem, there is no shape problem that I'm concerned about. But it can be a major size or really big location problem when the colors are working pretty good. But if it's a color problem, I don't deal with anything else. I just say, let's deal with that first. Let's get on with the program. So many people would say, I look for the back straggler of the drawing at the beginning. And I'm recommending you don't. That you actually look for the back straggler if you're going to have an agenda of the color. What you really want to do is look for the area that's least like, and whatever the notes are, you can have put down two notes. And if you have, say you picked a top and bottom on the drawing, and you say, oh, but the angle between these 2 points is wrong. Are you going to correct it down here or up here? Say you want it to be more vertical. You're going to correct it up here or down here. How do you know? Well, your composition will tell you. If you move this over, you're going to mess up the placement on the page. So you move the other one over. You see what I'm saying? There's that kind of clarity, that kind of simplicity you want to be pursuing constantly in this little game. So I'm just going to show you. And by the way, the video 460, adjusting the notes or adjusting whatever that was called, has the word adjusting in it. Just a few videos ago, I put this online so you can dig it up if you want to look at it first or with this or after this or whatever. All right, let's just look at a couple examples of what I'm talking about and see if I can provide you with the kind of clarity. This kind of clarity is going to make you, it's not going to make you a better problem solver. And it is solving problems. You have to solve problems to get closer to find yourself in greater proximity to the beauty of the thing you're painting, of the visual impression, right? And everything that makes it up is just a color relation or a value or a shape or a location relation, right? It's the way things are configured in relation to each other, things physical, okay? When I say physical, I mean pigment. So what we have at the very beginning is we have the back straggler. We have a set of color notes. This is what I recommend you do. Think like Monet. This is just a dab of blue here. Well, I'm not talking about a little dab of blue. I'm talking about an area that has blue in it. We're going to find the blue note, and we're going to try to get the yellow notes and the orange, any significant notes around here to try to get the field of color out there. So it's no different from saying what's the top and bottom of a drawing. You're just trying to get that beginning of this thing, and then you're going to find a bit of something over toward the left and something to begin to set up the shape. But that's a limited problem. That's the shape problem. This here, what I'm talking about right now, is a color problem, and color has three components, right? So you need to be able to say when you're looking at color, you need, first of all, if you just have a discipline right here, if you start your painting this way, you're going to set up a discipline that's going to hold you in good stead right to the end of your painting. The discipline is this. First of all, this is a color portion of this thing, but color is made up of values, chroma, and hue, and I put them in that order. So your first question, in a sense, and you have to key in a painting to have any kind of ability to get to correct. If you're correcting something, you only are correcting it to a relationship. You're not correcting it to sight size. We're not correcting it, this is so it's like that, this so it's like that, okay? But we have to key first. So we have to say, what is my dark is dark? And so you'll find an area in a painting like this, and you'll say, well, it's that, or maybe it's this. Whatever you say, so you'll put them down, and you'll make them big enough so you can see them. If they're blacks, don't put them so close to the white area that they're going to cause a nuisance for you later, trying to paint whites into them. But what we're trying to do is say, so in terms of the values, we need to know what the darkest dark is and the lightest light. Those have to be sitting on the page, okay? Because everybody else is going to know who he is going to be relating to those things, okay? And it makes it a considerably easier problem. But this is in the class of what you'd call keying. You have to know what your darkest dark and lightest lights are. You have to know what your most chromatic notes are, right? Is this the most chromatic, or this, or this, or this? But in any case, you're going to say, I believe, looking at the whole, I believe, and keep your eyes wide open, don't blur to see this. I believe my most chromatic note is, let's say you think it's this over here. You put it there, and then everybody else is trying to, first of all, relate to you so then you find yourself in the position, all right, okay, and then there's the hue, right? And then there's the red, yellow, and blue. So those are the three elements. So your first problem is to actually say, I see what this is made out of. I see what the problem could break down to, okay? And if you can't see, fuzzy thinking is when you think color and you don't know whether you mean hue, chroma, or value. So we're saying you need to be able to take anything out of the fuzzy zone and say, what do I mean about the color? What's wrong about the color? So just here, you already have this chance to pursue three things without any problem with drawing yet. Okay, you don't have to even think about drawing. Roughly, location is the nearest thing to drawing. So if you think your darks are like a third of the way up, or a third of the way up over here, if you think that's true, you can set them down in about those places. But that's the nearest thing to drawing we do. If these guys here, or this thing here is right near center, you could set it right near center. That's fine. That's the nearest thing we have to drawing. It's really not much of a question, right? You can say, if you say that's near center and you put it down, and you can ask, should it be more left or more right? Now, this is where you get into real easy test taking. When you're in school, didn't you prefer to see a multiple choice quiz or even a yes or no quiz to an essay question? What we've been doing, how to describe myself earlier was I was doing essay questions. Every time I saw a problem, an area there was a problem, I would just paint the whole thing out like I had to write the essay all over again. I didn't name the problem and go over there and adjust the painting in that little spot in the way in which it was off. So why would I paint the whole mug all over again if I have one little spot that's out of chroma? So you'll find ways that this. Now, you can be ambitious and paint the whole thing out over again if you want, but you will find that it's counterproductive, at least as an impressionist, because there's so much data. And it's best if you can keep the field tuned, that's nicely tuned, and not take apart more stuff that isn't wrong, just to get to the one thing that is, okay? I'm sure there's an aphorism about that kind of stuff. Somebody out there must know it. All right. So let's say we have a note here. We're trying to hit a note like this one. We'd say, all right, should that, you put it down, you believe it's the note. You could do that as if it were sight size. You can just set a note there. But immediately, the only truth in a picture is that the darkest dark is this, the lightest light is that, the most chromatic note is this, blah, 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 okay? If it is, by the way, it probably is these, but so you put this down and you say, the first question is what? Values. As you say, oh, there's something wrong with this. Oh, is it a values problem? Should be darker or lighter. And there you are comparing it to these, and you're finding out where it lands in relation. You have to learn to watch all three of these at once. You can see that it should be darker or lighter while you're watching that field of three, right? But that's an easy question, darker or lighter. You could even simplify it. You can say, should that be darker? Then you can ask a second question, should that be lighter? And then you can make that adjustment. And you're going to find that by looking at the three, you're going to know where you are. You're going to be in the zone. You're going to be in the range. You're going to be in the truth. What we call the absolute truth is the truth of relationships, right? It's a very funny thing to say, isn't it? So you have that with values. That was the dark and light. Should it be more chromatic or less chromatic? Well, you just start looking around to the world of chroma. There's a world that has no chroma. There's colors like this or that have virtually no chroma, a very little chroma. And where does this one land between the highly chromatic stuff of this stuff and that? So that's an essay question. So you put your note down and you say, should it be darker? So your immediate response is put a note down. Just make a sound with your voice, and immediately you'll see to make your voice higher pitched or lower pitched. You see what I mean? So you put this down. You got the correction to values. You're good, but it's still the backstraggler. So you now talk about chroma. You say, should it be richer or less rich? You start comparing with these, and you see it has more intensity. It comes to your eye with more intensity. Then it should deal with more. It should increase in relation to this one, and it should be increase in relation to this one. This is the sort of the no chroma. Do you see where I'm going with this? It's kind of a very simple question process. Can you ask a simple question and get a simple answer that even you can handle, right? And I took that to be the smart way to work. As a young person, I just realized that I should think of myself as an idiot, because then I would succeed. If I could actually teach an idiot to do well, because I might be that guy. I wanted to be successful. So keep remembering that. But you can follow that there's a hue thing as well. So if you're looking at the red, say you have call this whole set of things tending toward red, this group right here. Well, you can see this is the bluest of the reds, and you could say in relation to the next bluest, should this be more blue or less blue, right? And I'm saying you ask them a separate question. Should it be more blue? Well, you have an actual blue right here. Should it be closer to that? You can tell by looking at them at the same time. Again, you have to learn to look at things in groups, in sets. For the short term, just in small sets. In the long term, you have to see what this is in the grand field. And as the field starts filling out better, you need to keep reviewing it to see how you're doing. You know what I mean? To see whether this is the right note while you're watching in the grand ensemble. Right now, it just looks like the right note, but it's just floating. And you're doing good work about getting it rightly related to other things, by value, by color, by et cetera, et cetera. And by I meant to say hue, by chroma. Okay. So it goes on like that. Now, if you're going to the problem of that I set up in these intensives that I do, and I'm going to say I can't remember who all these guys are. I'm going to be wrong if I tell you this is Kevin's, but I think he told me it was his, but it could be three other guys. But what we sometimes do is just take a section of the studio. Somebody will find a spot, and they'll just find something interesting, something that has some fun light in it and interesting shapes or whatever. And we just do a brown one, so we've eliminated color now. But so you're just looking at a problem, a thing like this, and if the backstraggler is an area, let's just say the backstraggler is what would it be? The thing that's least like when we're looking at this thing as a grand whole. Let's just pretend we know. Okay, I'm going to say it's over here. Okay, it's just me talking to myself, talking out loud. It's over here. What is it about it? So I'm going to try to narrow it down. Is it a values problem? It doesn't look like it's particularly a values problem. Is it a size problem? Well, these things do appear massive. And then you keep going and going, and then all of a sudden you realize it's more of a focus problem. These things, this one in nature has clearer, crisper edges than I have. I have fuzzy edges. So that's an edge problem. And then you say, given this, should it be sharper or less sharp in relation to nature? Well, when you're looking at nature, you're trying to figure out how sharp that is while you're looking at other ones. So you could look at this one. This one over here is a clear, straight edge. And by the way, that's another thing you could pick on. This is wobbly. Well, that one is very, very continuous, right? It doesn't have this broken thing. And what this guy has done is he actually has already begun the process of making this one the sharpest, and this one may be second, but there's issues, right? But one thing at a time, you can find a lot of things to work on out here. I mean, like the size thing. This thing is too big. This spot here, that's a size problem. The middle dark is a size problem. The light should appear bigger. And by the way, I got to say, we are assuming that these photographs, that's what the eye was seeing. You can see this is in slightly different position. These two shouldn't be this close. The camera, whoever shot this, should have moved over. You guys, when you send me stuff to look at, be sure you do observe that you're standing in exactly the right place you should. But we're ignoring that and pretending that it's the same. I mean, so this would be an early problem, wouldn't it? This kind of space here, if it was really like this. Okay. But so you see what I'm saying? So you've just limited it. It's either an edge problem, and it was going to be consistent consecutively, one after the other. For a little while, you're better off just taking one of them and doing well with it. You know what I'm saying? And and you'll learn to be strategic. To do the one, if you see an area, there's a problem over here, the one that jumps at you. I just say take the one that jumps at you the most. But sometimes you're going to find that there's one that's because of the way paint works or whatever. It might be smarter to grab that one, given there's 2 or 3 things in that area. But when you're looking at the whole, it should be clear. One of the things that's happening in this picture is that when you see if you were going to say, well, this isn't continuous, it's all wobbly, and then you'd look at this one and say, oh man, they're both wobbly and they're both in nature, they're the straightest, they're long, continuous things. That would set you up to be sharp about which ones are the most, which ones are in that class. And there's a number of them that are in that class, have been continuous. This one here is continuous. This is continuous. What I mean is a straight line that doesn't have a lot of wobble in it. And there are variations. There's all sorts of stuff in them. But you just are looking at this thing as a whole, and you're trying to help yourself when you're looking at the whole, to say, and what part is least like, and then naming that part, and then saying a simple question. Okay, the first thing was, ask a simple question was, what is it about that area? And just take one. Don't try to be complicated and say the bulb. The bulb doesn't help you. You need to know if it's a location of a value, or if it's the value itself, or if it's the edge of the value, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean? If it's a contrast, whatever. All right? So you could go around a painting like this yourself, looking at it, and you can just pick something, and then you could say, for example, another one is like, I'm looking at this, and this thing looks like it could be off in angle. Now, don't go looking for trouble. Look at the whole, and only work on the part that is clearly coming to you as being least like. This one has a certain amount in the relation to this one of being sort of too outstanding, too projective. And what is the problem there? So you're looking at it. No, well, there's 2 things you're looking at it, and you're looking at it to all. First of all, you're looking at it because it's along one of these continuous guys, and you're looking at them. You have a set of continuous lines. Well, you do have an angle problem. This looks like it should be tilted a little bit more in relation to vertical. But there's also a back straggler in terms of the general impression, and that is, this is a blasting light, but it has a midtone on either side of it, whereas you set it as a blasting light right next to a black. And that's not true. So the buffering thing is going to bring you a little closer. So you say to yourself, should that be less contrasty where this meets something, where that highlight meets something? Should that be less contrasty? Now you're right to see this value and this one as the unit. Right, that stays together. We don't have to break this out. But the minute it looks wrong, now you have to put this in, not to draw the right side of it, but to make the joint not fall. So yeah, that was a value contrast problem right there. And you can fix that get value contrast problem in a second. Now, don't be ambitious to fix it as a piece of nature. Just get the value next to that thing right, and then go over here and get the value and or the edge, whatever it is, on the other side of that to look right, and you will have handled that problem. Now you may look at it and say, oh, gee, but it's way too big or way too skinny, but that's the next problem, okay? And then you're going to say to yourself, should it be wider? Should it be thinner? Should it be sharper? Should it be less sharp? You see what I mean? It's that kind of simple questioning that I couldn't make myself get to quickly enough. And I remember painting a pot 5 times in the same way as Sargent talks about painting the head out, or people talk about him painting it out over and over again. Because I didn't know how to just go grab onto that one little piece that was the backstroke. Now, you can think you're going to wind up in piecemeal painting, and you can. You have to learn how to correct a minor thing and incorporate it. That's a very big deal to be able to reincorporate an adjustment. So, so you'll take that for what it's worth for now. So this over here, I'm looking at this as a backstroke. Let's pretend it was. And if you look at the thing in nature, what's the problem? Well, the problem is that this thing maintains a unified light better. So the internals of values problem, the stuff inside this thing are too dark, so that it's killing the big effect. It's killing the big, you could say, okay? But by the way, this is something we do. The brown paper studies are something we do. It's a really nice way of training the eye. I recommend this outdoors, indoors. Interiors are wonderful to do it with. But portraits and still lifes, anything. Just slice of life, though, is a lot of fun with these. And you can do these in hours, and you can put more time into them. It's a form of study. But in this case here, I recommend you do it to study what we're talking about now. Study how to find the area, the one area that's got a problem, name the problem, and then ask the simple question, should it be more of this? Should it be more of that, right? If it's an angle problem, should it be more vertical? Should it be less vertical? Plum is the god of all angles. You ask always, and it's always a relational question. So the first thing you say is that value wrong? You'd say in relation to what? So if you're painting this value, and by the way, this shimmer is really a big deal. It really does have a significant blast into your eye. The highlights up here might have a similar kind of a thing going on, right? The blasting highlights. So anyway, let's go to the next one. We'll just do the same thing in another one. Let's do this one. This is another Brown study. This is from Mary. She loves to work on these kinds of things while we're doing intensives. Mary's been in the studio, or she's really not in the studio anymore. She's just somebody who has a studio next to ours, so she likes to come over and see what we're up to. And then she plays the game with us frequently. She's a real asset for students in the workshops who are trying to learn. She really does present. She's first of all a beautiful example of staying humble. Keeping improving, constantly improving, looking for ways to improve. But let's just take this as if it were. Now you can see that sometimes, like this is bigger on this side and smaller on that, so it's already turned a little bit. Won't have quite the same proportions, but we'll treat it as if it was actually squared up and looking right. And I did, by the way, sometimes these shots come in and these things aren't sight size. If they're not sight size, it's harder for you to see what I'm talking about, right? But one of the things I'm trying to get everybody to do is pick, when you have an extended cast, pick a place near the top where you're going to say, I don't want this to go any further than that. Place down near the bottom somewhere and say, I'll set that as the bottom. Could be this thing, just the top of this, plus some of that. What I'm trying to do is say, let's establish points as the bottom, points as the top, and we're not going to be moving them up and down. This, again, the key thing to painting is learning how to key. When you're painting with your eyes, you have to know things for sure. And those are choices. What's my darkest dark going to be? Well, charcoal will only go X dark. You can't go any darker than that. And I don't see any darker darks in this picture. There's always a question of whether you have accents, room for accents. That's more true of the lights than the darks. But if you say to yourself, this is the darkest dark, you can put it down and use that charcoal up. I'm recommending these brown paper studies. You actually do full value. Use the charcoal up. It's just fine charcoal. Don't go to try to make perfect values here. Don't try to do sight-size values. But you're always keying. So you're saying, that's my lightest light, my darkest dark. This is probably my lightest light in this general mass here. She seems to have said that. She's treating this pretty good. This is further into it than the first minute. But in any case, what you're doing is no matter what you're drawing, what you're doing, even if you're in drawing, you have a relational thing. So if you're looking at this thing as a whole, you might say, oh, my bird is this white is too small. Oh, it looks too small. Also, it doesn't look like it lines up right, assuming everything about this is just exactly the way it looks. It doesn't look like it lines up right with this. You can either move this up or move that down. But since this is too small, let's just go ahead and move that down. By the way, my question was, here's a blob. I see a problem down here. When I'm looking at this thing, I see a problem right there. And by the way, keep on, no matter what 2 or 3 things you put down, look for the back straggler. As soon as you put something down, there's going to be a back straggler about the 3 things you put down. Bring them into harmony. Bring them into harmony with each other by asking these simple questions. Number 1, finding out what the issue is, the area, and then naming a pig. Is that a shape, size, or location problem? In this case, we wind up with a size and a location problem, so we're going to easily fix the location problem. That you can see this should line up a little below where that is right there. And so you can easily pull that down. That'll leave you with such and such a size, which you can then look at and see when you're looking at, is that a big problem? When it's the location of top and bottom, I consider that to be the problem no matter what. Even if you think there's a size here, there's a problem down here, and you can see it's one of the bottom points and doesn't line up, then I think that's a problem that precedes the size problem. See what I mean? I'm limiting it to one problem with one name. So Mary has a concept here of the light effect, the contrast here. She's going to go down, she's going to move this down to the right place, maintaining that, or even improving it, but without getting ambitious and changing the subject. The subject is to get this into exactly the right location, meaning literally to get that effect, that contrast plus edge that produces that look, to move that down. Not the highlight here, the little things that make up the whole arm. And again, this isn't necessarily what she was looking at. Things, people shoot these shots a little bit loosely, carelessly. Not saying anything about you, Mary. So anyway, what you have down here is this, you have this need to bring that effect right down there. So you're going to memorize that shape all over again. You're going to blob the value in down there, and you're going to cut it off. You might have to, in this kind of brown paper, you might have to use a brush and brush away the darks, and then come down and remake that piece of contrast, that light shape. Just the light shape, not the bird. Don't worry about the bird. Then you're going to back up. First of all, you should check and make sure, debrief and make sure it's true that you actually got what you meant to get. But then you're going to back up, and you're not going to stay with the bird. You're going to take in the whole again, and you're going to see who then jumps at you. Okay? The thing that's least like when you're looking at the whole. And that's where you're going to go next. You're not going to be staying down there. If this doesn't jump out at you, the size of this, or anything else about that, don't keep your eye down there. And don't look for little things. There's a lot of things in here that should have been corrected, assuming this hasn't moved or anything on her. But there's things in here that are in there that aren't good enough, like the value of this over here. I'm saying assuming these are really the same look, by the way. So don't assume I'm just picking on Mary. Who knows where this is. But this value is out of value. You put it down as a shape and you make it the wrong value, you got back stragglers you put in by being thoughtless, right? So as soon as you can make an area just sort of hang together, but when you start subdividing it, you've got to put down the values that it's made out of. And then there's the other part of it what is the set of the lights, what is the set of the darks? These are all things that we're dealing with in the problem. So, yeah. So given that once this is set, though, it might suddenly occur to you that something that makes a mark between here and there, something like this, here, or that, some other point, is not in the right place anymore. And then you'll have issues. You'll have to get the size right from here to here to here. And that's it. You say, okay, that's a size issue. Now, don't destroy this thing. Don't erase it. Just move that look. Maintain that. Use that for reference. Put it up here higher. Put it in the right place till it looks like it's exactly doing the right thing, right? Tune it. And then if you don't see any more problems with it, tie it on to the area, bring it back into relation, and then go find the back straggler looking at the whole. Tying it on is bringing the unity of the general impression back again. So you don't want it to suddenly look like there's two of these or have other kinds of goofy noise that you just don't need. Anyway, but I don't mean to be talking about all that. I just want to talk about the issue of simple questions. Keep remembering how you don't want to write an essay questions. You don't want to have to tell everybody everything you know about something. What you want to do is be able to say, to solve the problem yourself, is that a size problem? I see the area, there's something over there. I could pick on this one just to say, there's something over here, like that spot. That looks like a problem. There's a problem. That's out of character with the whole thing. Is that a size problem, location problem? No, it's a power unit problem. There is a big clear unit, and you just have a little point. These points are fine, but eventually that's going to be a problem. This point, I mean, you can float those. When you start bringing these values here, you have a problem of knowing where that is. This doesn't just run together, okay? But suddenly you might have a problem, and this would be called a silhouette problem, a major effect problem. You know, this is one of those players. There's the leading effects wherever they are, these leading things, these power lights with high edge contrast, those things. And by the way, you reversed it over here, Mary. This should be a soft edge, not a hard edge, but it's going to be very thoughtful. That's an edge problem, right? If you're looking at this as a sharp edge, this one comparatively is a soft edge. So that's just an edge problem, and you can solve that. Don't be thinking you have to go paint the hat again. Do you see what I'm trying to say to you all? You're trying to have control of your problem solving all the way through these things. All right, so let's look at a color one, and this is thanks to Mandy. I think it's Mandy. I might be wrong. It might be Lindsay. Sorry, ladies. You're both good friends and good painters. This was in another intensive, and I like to set up these sort of semi-still life interiors looks, you know, that where you can get big picture, little picture, or multiple. You could paint this as a center of interest, or that could have been something all by itself. And but she's chosen the whole thing. And what we have, and so what we have, let's just say we're looking at these two the way they are, and suddenly we're drawn to this area. We're drawn to this area. Look at this thing. You got to continuously look at the thing as a whole. Just enjoy it as a whole. Enjoy it as a whole. And whatever's the thing that strikes you, just go there. Just go there. Say, what's the problem, boys? You know. Now keep remembering that if you don't do good keying, if you don't know where your top and bottom is, or if you don't know what your lightest light and darkest darks are, we do have a problem. The setup that all starts with the values, and then the chroma and the hue, and that beginning point, and then the leading effects, the way we work, as you know. And you see this person has been very astute about setting up, you know, significant effects here, down here, really looking very aware to articulate effects, really profoundly got that in the game, along with color, along with values, along with what I mean is hue and values and chroma and all that stuff. So she's working nicely here in every way. So everybody's going to have a backstraggler. There's always a backstraggler in your painting. So, and I'm going to assume again that this thing was undoubtedly shot in the wrong place. I think this person was standing higher when they did this, or closer to the model. When they took the photograph, they were standing back further or were down lower. So you got but you'd say, looking at this, is something wrong in this area, and then what is that? You know, and your brain might go, is that the head sizes or what? And all of a sudden, it's a size problem. It's a size right here. When I'm looking at the whole, I can name that as a size problem. These two have to be closer to each other. Now, you're dictated. Remember, this is a composition, so you will have set these up ideally exactly where you want them, the outer points to set up, and the right point, left points, all that stuff to set up the composition. This is a later consideration. We don't actually work from here to here to here to here to here and then to there. We work from here to here, and then we subdivide. Okay, that's the way our thinking works in this way of working, from the outside in, and from effect. So you're talking about getting all the ensemble of effects out here at once. So that's a big deal. Again, back to the beginning, it's important for you to know the names of all the critters that we have to work with. We have values, we have chroma, we have hue, we have light effects, we have, which is contrast plus edge. We have form, the transit value movement. We have proportion as usual, angles, the tilt of anything, this. Everything has a gesture. Groups of things like this thing right here is gestural, right? It has a gesture to it. It sweeps off at a certain angle to vertical. Everything, there's gestures everywhere. So understand, we have to know that all the names of all the critters and have addressed them all in the course of this thing, okay, as you're going right along. One of the reasons you start slow and so you can finish fast is because you need to address, we want all the horses pulling at once. Do you know all the horses? Okay, so when you do the subdivision, start breaking it down, you know what to do, So a linear proportion, this is a simple linear proportion problem. You've set something down here as the bottom. I don't know what you picked. Let's say it's the top of this head because it's a strong reader and useful, and it has the chin of this, it's part of this to go with it. So you could say that could be a good low point that I could set up pretty good. It wouldn't matter what you're picking, but what matters is that when you got this fixed and you got this fixed, then this is a very huge thing to get early and often. And I'm not assuming that she did. I'm assuming somebody shot this photograph in the wrong place. Okay. So the question was, where's the back straggler? You're looking at the hole. You don't even have to ask. Your eye should be grabbing. Your eye should just go there. Don't look for trouble elsewhere. Take it where your eye takes you. It's okay. It won't hurt a thing. And once you're there, you say, okay, what's the back straggler? Name the back straggler. It's in this class. It's a values problem. It's a values movement problem. It's a color problem. It's a size problem, or it's a location problem in that class, in that way of working. So we already did that simple question. We asked one after the other, and we kept discarding. No, it's not that. It's not that. Oh, that's a location problem. This thing's in the wrong place. You could say it's a proportion problem because this to this to this isn't right. Okay? And so it goes. Simple questions. Then you can say, should it be higher or lower? Well, I guess this is too big. I guess this would be lower, right? Doesn't that get easy? Now, when you do lower it, you don't just get irritated. You just go and draw it even more beautifully the second time, okay? Even if in paint, you're going to push these lights out through the darks. If it's wet, ideally in that first day, you're still working on this. You can do it just push the whites right through the darks and get rid of the darks. But you want to push them out big and then come back and draw with your darks even more beautifully than you did last time, even more like, getting the beauty of it more, the edge quality, the whatever, But you have that renewed opportunity. And every time you've painted something like 3 times, you will have painted it better if you follow this model. Okay. Okay. So, but that's the way it works. I don't think I need to belabor this. I think I've already belabored it. Didn't think I'd be going this long. You can see if suddenly it became there's a problem right here, what's the problem? Well, actually, looks good in most ways. Oh, this thing is vertical. Oh, this thing over here, it's an angle problem. Should it be more vertical or less vertical? Oh, it should be less vertical. This should hang out. Okay. And then that's a simple problem. You can correct it and this time make the edge even better than the last time. Okay. Now, down here, you might have a problem. You say, okay, so this thing over here, I'm looking at this to this. I see that's the area that's the problem. What's the problem? Well, the most noticeable problem is it doesn't have the light effect at the edge. It doesn't, you made a shape, but you didn't make it out of the stuff that's there. So we have a values problem with a light effect production that's non-existent. So, it's more important in this case to have that left edge of that thing and do the right thing than it is to figure out the arm or figure out any aspect of that thing. But you can see how one thing after another. So if you keep watching the whole, you'll be okay. Just keep just looking at that hole. You're going to correct something and you're going to make sure that you tie it all back together so it's in that unity. You haven't lost unity with the general impression, the unity you had before. In fact, it should even be a little better. I don't know. I'm hoping that'll help. Ask a simple question, get a simple answer, correct it simply, and tie it back into harmony in a very beautiful way. Find skills. These wet on dry, wet into wet joints. Learn to make them over and over again and put them back together. I think there was a point at which Sargent said to DeCamp, and I don't know where I read this, but he said, I don't know how you do that. Sargent would find himself having to paint things out over and over again, and he noticed that DeCamp could correct a spot and have it totally be in unity, just like it was a minute before, without painting the whole area out. So that's a thing to strive for. By the way, this is a pastel. It's the same problem as paint. It isn't much different, but you times will, instead of pushing the whites through the dark, you'll have to brush out the darks, knock them off the canvas. You'll have to tilt the canvas forward so it doesn't just run down into ruin all your whites down there. But it'll be that class of things, okay? So you always have to know what you're doing. You have to know whether it's a shape problem. Shape is that going like around here. That's shape, right? Like if you're looking at this thing here, there's this thing right here, that's a shape. You can see that this one is suggesting a little too much of a square, where this one is a little more of a wedge, so we say, or whatever, right? Etc. But shape is, anything like all these configurations taken together. That's a shape problem, right? A size problem is this the right size while you're looking at this? Is this the right size? Or is this the right size while you're looking at the whole? It looks like this one might have grown up a little bit. When you're looking at the whole, it looks like that might be big. It's a tendency for people, I see it quite frequently when you're working with your eyes, to make parts too big. And you don't notice it, so you don't notice if a pot or the area here is taking up too much space in relation to the whole thing. But it will create a whole different beauty, a different aesthetic than what it's doing in nature if you miss these size relationships. Even the widths, like this one, there's a width here. This should be wider. These photographs, we're not talking the same place. Keep remembering that. I'm not this guy who's picking on this painting knowing that it was shot from a different spot. The person was standing further over this way. You can see that because this thing should have been, these people, they line up differently in plumb. So you can see the camera, the viewer, this viewer was standing more to the right. The camera guy was more to the left. So several things don't line up right. But that's the kind of stuff, don't worry about it. I don't mean that. But nevertheless, if you're this far into a painting and everything is equal, then you'd notice this width is a problem. That there's something wrong here. You'd see that the width isn't great enough for the height that's in there. Your width is a little bit small. And then you have to sort out what that's all about, how to make it better. But yeah, I better stop, I guess. I'm hoping just the idea will come across to you that you ask simple questions, you get simple answers. I want you to go and correct that one thing, bring it back into harmony, and then debrief and make sure your picture is now better, and that isn't the back straggler area anymore. You could have 2 or 3 problems in the same area. Like I said with that previous one, that bird looked to be too small. I was thinking that might be a problem, but then I saw that we have a bigger problem, which is when you have the top and bottom not established, then that's kind of a bigger problem. But it could be that when you're down there and you do this, then this continues to not be adequate. Now, some of tying it together might be enough to make that not be the back straggler anymore. And you don't sit in an area, it's a big deal. You don't sit in an area, you just look for trouble in that area. Don't just keep working on that area ambitiously. Don't do it, okay? Go back to the thing as a whole. Pat yourself on the back without injuring your shoulder, and that you got this good, and that this whole thing here is more like, without becoming fixated on it, because we're still interested primarily in what this does to this, does to this. Remember the star thing, we're actually, if you're an Impressionist now, keep remembering this is advice to Impressionists. If you're an Impressionist, it's everything in relation to everything else all the time, okay? All right. That's going to have to do, guys. I could torture this one, but I think it's easy to follow. Look at the thing as a whole, find the area that's least like, then narrow it down and say what kind of thing is that, and you have your little shopping list. Is it a size problem, a values problem, etc. And then say should it be higher or lower, and the answer has always got to be, and your brain's got to pop up and brightly say, like a just an automatic reaction. It's got to say in relation to what? In relation to what? The reason it's off is because it's off in relation to something. So you have some sort of an ensemble, but when I look at the thing as a whole, this is off, and I can see it's off in relation to this. But and so you say, well, it should be higher or lower. Well, if that's a fixed point, then it should obviously be lower, because this is not at the right angle. This is going down when it should be going up. et cetera, et cetera. And you can notice those things by getting the angle relationship, by being aware of what it is to vertical and all that. Anyway, but you've limited it. What you did is that's a location problem. Don't be wrecking any of your work. Don't just make little marks there. Go down there and give me the drawing. Move that thing. Have another new concept of it. Do it better than before. Move it to that new location. Check off that it isn't the back straggler anymore, and let yourself quietly look at the thing as a whole. Enjoy it as a whole again, and deal with the next back straggler. Okay. All right. I should probably add one thing, and that is sometimes the back stragglers everything is hanging together pretty good. That part, which for a little bit ago, when your eyes were darkened, didn't need to be worked on, might be becoming the back straggler. So for a long time, there's nothing in here, and all of a sudden that is developmentally tuned. It's time for that thing there. It's time for that. Where a minute before you're after this to this to this, and all this big drama of these big power whites, and all of a sudden, so it can be developmental, but always stay tuned to the fact that when you're darkening down your eyes, you're saying, oh, let's get these majors and let's get them to really sing to each other, and let's pull the unity of that set of relationships. Okay, that is our strategy, if you want to call it that, working from the greater to the lesser, meaning the most powerful, as much as possible, and from the outside in, from the greater in size to the lesser in size. You know what I mean? From the greater masses, et cetera, to the minor subdivisions and all that. Hopefully that's helpful, guys. And that's out of my own head. There's nobody asking a question about that specifically, although I think it follows on the heels of lots of things you guys have said. So, all right. So that'll be it. I'm out of here, hoping that works for you. And let me see. Again, thank you. Thank you to our Ben C. and Christopher F. for your kind and recurring contributions. Keep them coming, folks. Share, like, all the above. Comment, send comments, questions, whatever. Let's keep the ball rolling. I'm going to be unpacking stuff as it goes along. So this is now a subdivision. Okay, we are now narrowing ourselves down for talking about adjusting the notes in certain ways. I'm talking about the very specifics of how to narrow down the question. Okay, when you're adjusting notes. So notice how that's happening. I'm interested in any subdivision of the conversation you guys want to make with me. All right. So yeah, like, share, subscribe, comment, and have a great painting week. See you in the next one.